Is it possible to decouple from China today?
Well, I think over time it's definitely possible if you said that's what our objective is. I don't think that should be the objective. I think from the United States standpoint, my objective would be anything that relates to national security. Obviously, America should rely on itself for close allies for that. We didn't, and that's kind of a shame, and I'm surprised. Anything that's about really unfair trade, that should be dealt with. That's true with a lot of nations. There's a lot of unfair trade all over the place. This has been going on for 100 different years. But a lot of things don't matter as much, where you get your textiles made, your footwear, your furniture. So I think we should be clear-eyed about what we're trying to accomplish. And I also think we should do it with allies. I think if the Western world, I would want to negotiate eventually with Europe, with the UK, with Japan, Korea, Australia, Philippines, and have a very strong economic relationship, and also then face off with China and say, we want to trade with you, but here are the terms of trade that we all think are fair and reasonable.
I think your whole point about alliances was something that you made very clear in your very good letter. There is a feeling when I talk to people around the world, governments and businesses, that today it is the US itself that is undermining the post-world order that it has created. How do you get around that? What do you think should happen now?
Yes, I think the most important thing is that we don't read a book in 40 years, How the West Was Lost. And so I think it's one thing for any nation or the United States to say, I think this is unfair around trade, around the cost of military. I think there's some very good points, which I think Europe knows that they need to spend more on their military. But that does not mean we shouldn't have a military alliance with you all, Europe in general. And same with the economy. They need to do more. The GDP per person in Europe has dropped from something like 70% of America to like 50%. That's not sustainable. I think Europe has already recognized it needs to change its own rules, regulations, and guidelines if they want to grow faster, and I think that's true. But it should be done with us. The goal should be, in my view, to strengthen Europe and get them closer, not to get them weaker and get them further. So, I think fragmentation of the world is a bad idea, fragmentation of the Western world, and you can end up with the world looks like before World War I and World War II, where it's almost every nation for themselves, trying to figure out how they're going to protect themselves. And unfortunately, that might lead to proliferation of nuclear weapons.
What are the consequences for JP Morgan Chase of this potential fragmentation?
Well, I think from a company standpoint is that, Warren Buffett talks about the resiliency of America if you just invested in America. I think that's been true, but for any company here, and a lot of companies Western companies around the world, having a strong America has been good for them, and having a strong Western world has been good for them. So if that wasn't true, I think it would put us in a much more weakened state. I'm talking about over 40 or 50 years, not the next 3 years or so.